there to reproduce, and a lot of these hormones, a lot of these the estrogen and especially estrogen, it's there to communicate to the brain and tell them, let's stimulate the ovaries to provoke follicles to create an egg. So it's a whole. It's we need to understand what is a woman first. But I wanted to ask you, do you find that sensitive?
No, I think it even needs to start like, and that's what I'll be talking about, like who like originated birth control, because I think that's where a lot of this has been like hidden and kept from us. Um,
Mm.
a woman, it's very basic what a woman is. You know, it's controversial now because the more that we discover the truth about like what's been hidden from us of who this person was
You
from
know,
too.
hmm
Yeah.
in this paper I read, is talking about like how these pills have influence for women to not be so attractive to men or to find men less attractive, but start to look at because they start to look at their other females. But when they get off the birth control, they start. It's almost like they go back into liking men again. A lot. It's there's a large study on that too. So
Yeah. No, we'll get into it. I think it's very it's an important conversation to be had, and it's
definitely.
not. I personally do not believe that this is women's health. You're putting a woman's body on pause and telling her that her body is not like there's something wrong with her. That's not women's health, you know. But we'll get into it.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so por eso te digo, va a ser muy bueno porque, como dice Autumn, ella también quiere hablar sobre eso, o sea, sobre de dónde sacamos esta idea de que, por ejemplo, que esto es saludable. Todo, claro que en ciertas ocasiones para regular, por ejemplo, si hay un problema hormonal, por ejemplo, personas que sufren de cáncer, hay debe haber un cierto control para nivelar el nivel de estrógeno, pero eso ya son casos de vida o muerte, ¿no?
Sí, pero a ver, aquí yo creo que básicamente el hecho de ser mujer, eh, aparte de la parte hormonal, es el hecho de que este ser es el que puede primero generar a través de sus ovarios, no sabemos, pero cuando ya llega esta unión óvulo espermatozoide se genera vida. Entonces, esta
Exactamente,
vida
exactamente.
es la que necesitamos para que
Se
sobrepoblar el planeta, para
la raza
la raza humana misma. Entonces, el
problema
el problema siempre hemos visto es el hacerlo de manera indiscriminada, hacerlo de una manera indiscriminada, sin el control deseado. Por ejemplo, no vamos a tener a una mujer con 15 embarazos. Tampoco es poco probable. Estamos perjudicando la vida de esa señora, de esa mujer. Entonces todo hay que hacerlo de manera racional, porque tampoco es sobrepoblar el planeta, porque se acaban los recursos. La idea es siempre control.
Look at David's background.
Hey, it's looking good.
Por fin.
All right, so you let me know when we're ready, and I'll kick it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
For
sure.
The lives
So those
are
are
going.
so those are going.
I'm just gonna put
the live
translations
for autumn.
Oh, let me. Did I put you as a co-host? Put you as a co-host. My bad. Oh no, you're a host already.
Yeah, I'm gonna start.
You want to Gemini note it? You got this.
Awesome. And I'm gonna put in the recording. And then actually, no, can you translate for us throughout the podcast?
Sure, I got you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
I got you. No worries, man. Okay, so let me know. You can't do the subtitles.
I don't know why they're not working. Actually,
That's fine. If they don't work, I'll help with the translation.
Actually, there we go.
Got it?
Yeah, finish your work now.
Yeah, let's go. All right, you guys ready?
Ready?
Pues,
All right.
okay.
All right, welcome to the Ethics Still podcast. We have a very exciting episode today. We have our co-founders, Kevin and Autumn, and our chemists in the house, David Andrade, and myself, Wendell. We're going to talk about birth control, the chemical and psychological effects on women, and also we're going to talk about Plan B. So we're going to first start with the birth pills. And I want to do something a little unusual. We have Autumn, which she's a women leader and so courageous. I would like to hear what would be her first question. What is your curiosity about this topic, Autumn?
Oh my goodness, I have so many things that come to mind. But I guess it hits home because as a woman, obviously, for many years I've struggled with a lot of like period issues, and I never was given an answer for why I always had such painful periods, to be honest with you. Um, and I even had made a trip to the hospital where I had a doctor look me in the eyes and say, "Well, if I had a cure for what you have, I would be a millionaire." And he's like, "I can't help you." And I just have always had a dead end in trying to figure out what was going on, but the only solution that everybody gave to me was birth control. Oh, you have cramps? Take some birth control. You're having heavy bleeding? Take birth control. You're bleeding for 9 days? Take birth control. And every time I would ask questions, it would just lead me into like a never-ending loop. And I honestly get frustrated because I have these symptoms, and I had to do a deep dive into like connecting my own dots, which we'll get into, but sitting on the sidelines with somebody who actually like would love to learn about women's health and have solutions given. Honestly, rally at parades around abortion and birth control as women's health care. When you have people struggle with PCOS, endometriosis, all of these things that are actual women's health issues not be addressed, but the more promotion of abortion and birth control, it honestly like gets my goat. So that's why I have an interest in this topic. And I guess and I guess discuss what is women's health, what is why is it important, why is it important to educate our young women the beauty of their bodies, why are women's bodies condemned today, right? What are the stereotypes of a woman's body, and why is it seen as controversial to talk about these topics, but it's not controversial to talk about a woman's right to birth control. That only masks the problem. It doesn't help. So, and other than that,
Yeah, definitely agree to that. Also, we don't talk about the long effects. And it's sad to see that the only solution they give is just take birth control pills. And we don't think about in depth what are going to be the long term effect of taking birth control pills. And I wanted to start this with David. I wanted to ask David how can we start? How do you want to start chemically this woman health journey with women with birth control and the chemical effects?
Primero, hay que saber que la mujer, estamos hablando de mujer XX o cualquier tipo de, no las que se consideran mujeres, sino las que son mujeres y que tienen el órgano reproductor femenino. No somos iguales todos, cada uno tiene sus particularidades, como dijo Oron, en la parte de que tienen un padecimiento, una endometriosis, otras no los padecen, y a todas las tratamos por igual. Y que hay terapias encargadas de solucionar la enfermedad femenina, en este caso por control hormonal, o como vieron la parte de la manda muchas veces a embarazarse y que una vez que se embarace van a disminuir estas complicaciones. Hay que ver que este es un ciclo mensual y todos los meses va a suceder el mismo problema o vamos a tener esta posibilidad de que esta mujer pueda quedar embarazada. Mientras que los hombres no, nosotros sí podemos controlar y no vamos a estar embarazados, pero vamos a ser los causantes de ese embarazo, digámoslo así. Y somos quienes nosotros deberíamos de controlar la sobrepoblación y no a las mujeres. Dentro del punto de vista como hombre, porque no es lo mismo, me pongo más del lado de la parte femenina, porque nosotros podríamos embarazar con la chica que querramos, digámoslo así. Si somos personas inconscientes y estamos con muchas parejas y podemos generar muchos embarazos, mientras que la mujer no, puede generar uno y ese le dura aproximadamente 9 meses. Yo creo que el control tal como la parte de la natalidad, digámoslo así, debería ser orientado hacia otro lado. Como opinión personal. La única forma que nosotros tenemos para prevenir embarazo del uso del condón o no sé cómo le llaman allá,
Vasectomía.
preservativo o la vasectomía, que es netamente el control de que ya no puedes controlar es embarazo, para no dejar a nadie embarazado. Pero a muchos hombres no nos gusta la palabra vasectomía o el método del preservativo. Creo que somos nosotros los encargados de controlar esa parte. Pero ya estamos lejos de eso y por eso existen los métodos anticonceptivos, que son muchos, hacia la parte femenina, desde dispositivos intrauterinos, intradérmicos o de pastilla. Entonces creo que hoy día vamos a hablar de dos pastillas en especial, las cuales creo que son las menos nocivas y una es mal utilizada.
Yes. Guys, from what David was saying, what is your point of view?
Yeah. So, the contraceptive methods are like vasectomies and for the guys, and then the pills and Plan B for the women's. Like one of them is such like a long term. Like once you snip it, it's like you can't reattach the tube. Um, and that was like done for the creative portion of that because it is that creative cell that's in your body creates life. Um, and then for the lady side, one is just kind of like a band-aid for the moment. I think with the pills that are the methods that are involved are kind of more on methods of they're like band-aid methods. They're attachment methods. Like it's valid. It does create life, and that's the hard part. And like it's not that it's the hard part, but it does create life, and you can't take that away from it. And we'll patch it up with these contraceptive methods. And God gave us this for a reason, like it gets to be like fruitful and all, So it's such a hard topic because at the same time, right? But like America's going through a baby boom right now. Like China's trying to go through a baby boom right now too. It's just these are effects of the contraceptive methods.
Yeah, but there hasn't been a really good biological responsibility for men, and what happened is this responsibility was passed to women. And we also got to look at the behavior, right? And I'm gonna tell you what life looked like for women, the before and after. So what happened when the before the birth pill didn't exist. Women were subjected to be home. They were always getting pregnant. They couldn't really go into schools because they were considered a liability to not finish, or a liability that if you work, you could get pregnant and then you weren't going to be there. And you gotta remember, there were no pregnancy laws back then. There was none of these things were designed. So there's a before and after the birth pill. So after the birth pill, you started to see that, and it's unfortunate that they didn't start seeing women as a liability at work. That is the psychological effect it starts having. Then you start seeing women, really committing to a long-term career. So it has been a transformation in that aspect, but every good thing has its bad. We can't, say that this hasn't been giving women I would say like an opportunity, an equal opportunity with of men. But what I do believe men should have, like David was saying, like you were saying, we need to have a biological responsibility. If we were more responsible with the seeds that we can plant, we would have never had these issues to start with. But also, what are we biologically designed for? So we have to even go, before we even think of the psychology, we need to think about the biology and the chemistry, how these things take into effect. And then after we understand that, I think we can go into really what these pills do to your brain, and how do they chemically react in your body. Because they do have some really, I would say they have some really bad effects, especially in women that are in their adolescence. It produces, it changes their life in many ways. So, Autumn, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I think if we're going to talk about birth control, we need to talk about the founder of birth control. And I like that you're saying like there's a before birth control and there's an after, because that's for sure. So Margaret Sanger was a woman who, she was very, let's just say like she was supported and highly regarded by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime. She was a eugenicist, right? And so she concocted the idea of birth control because she basically said Jews, blacks, and Hispanics should not be reproducing. And she basically said, like, she condemned abortion for the, like, survive, but people with handicaps, mental handicaps, and just of a different race. She said, like, basically didn't have everything here, but didn't have everything here, but didn't have right to live, right to live. And so, if you look around where Planned Parenthood are, which claim to give women's a lot of health care. What is the health care? Birth control. They're always in the poorest neighborhoods. They're always in predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And they're the women who they have put on birth control. And she wrote a lot about, like, I forgot how she phrased it, but like the poor people like shouldn't be reproducing. And she wrote about the Black people in the South, and how I think she said like they were breeding like irresponsibly. And so she was just a very horrible woman. And she spoke of the demise of the family. She spoke about, being able to sleep around freely and have no consequence. And she kind of put that notion of like you guys are saying, that men don't have the responsibility of a woman. And, my views are very, I have a very controversial views, but men and women are predominantly different, right? We both bring life into the world, but women bring babies into the world. They bring life into the world, and men give the seed that gives life to the world. And so I think like when she introduced the foundations of birth control, which contraception and abortion go hand in hand, the more she introduced that into the world, which the Nazi regime and the doctors, Joseph Mengele, they were using her methods and praising her for it. And, that's not talked about right now, right? But when you have the Planned Parenthood galas where they're giving out the Margaret Sanger Awards, you have to look at these people that they are awarding, Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. And like, this is what these people stand for, but they'll have people like under the guise of, this is for healthcare and we care about you. But in reality, they want to see the demise of the family, and they want they don't want the truth out there, right? And there really is not a lot of information about the woman's body. It is seen as like destructive, where a woman has to put work before her family. But there are women who genuinely love raising a family or wanting to be a mom. And I think our culture has become a culture of death, where a woman has been made to feel like she is inferior to a man. And we don't sit down and say, like, a man and a woman both are different but complementary to each other. They're harmonious, and we both have very important roles to play in society. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a lot.
There's a what you're saying there. It's true. There's a psychological effect now that you see these hormonal changes in women. I'm not going to say that's everyone, but a large majority. Think about how being a stay-home mom is viewed today. No, correct? We can agree to that.
Well,
It's almost
it's
almost like society has belittled. Like I have kids, and David has kids, and it's the hardest job. And it's the hardest job you can do. It's not easy. It's not easy, and it's very stressful. It's not an easy task. So I like it's been undermined, and I'm not saying that women have to stay. No, what I'm saying is we should never undermine taking care of a child, regardless of a man or a woman. It's hard work, and it's every day consistent that you have to do this to raise that child in conjunction for the best future you can possibly give them. I'm sorry, Autumn, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can keep talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I fully agree with you guys for sure. Because I was just talking to my neighbor the other day and how he's raising his kid. He just has a newborn, and his routine is just like fully thrown off and stuff. And it is a lot of work. It comes with responsibility, and I think like the culture now throws away the responsibility of it. I mean, we have contraceptive methods. And it's such a hard balance. So you have the fertility windows, right? Like the natural windows, and then we have these man-made sources, the chemical sources, which is like Plan B um and the other birth control pills. I guess one of my questions to David is what's the effects of like the long term effects of, let's say, using Plan B over and over, or like the chemical differences of Plan B and the birth control pill? Like, what's the chemical differences, and how does it impact the body?
Bueno, primero, la responsabilidad es mutua y debe ser mutua hombre-mujer en la parte de la crianza de los hijos y en la parte de decidir cuántos hijos uno quiere tener con su pareja o cuántos hijos quiere tener. Puedes tener 10 parejas, te casas ahora, te divorcias, si quieres tener más hijos. Yo creo que esa responsabilidad y ahora ya se la toma más en serio la parte masculina. La tomamos más en serio ahora. Porque ya hay una mayor responsabilidad. En cuanto a los dos métodos que vimos, uno es considerado de emergencia, porque es una sola pastilla, pero se la está utilizando de una manera inadecuada, porque si tú tomas una de estas pastillas, significa que tuviste una relación sin ningún tipo de protección. Y eso genera un problema diferente, que es de que no previenes la transmisión de una enfermedad. ¿Ya? El primer punto. El segundo, que esta emergencia solo te sirve para el momento, para ese momento y ese encuentro. Porque si ahí al día siguiente tienes encuentro con la misma persona o con otra, ya no te sirve porque el efecto dura 15 horas. Entonces, si ya pasan las 15 horas y tienes otro encuentro sin protección, puede quedarse embarazada. y otra vez, si esta persona toma esta emergencia, y esa ya no es ya otra emergencia, y otra vez cargas a tu cuerpo, a tu organismo de una cantidad elevada de hormonas, que al final puede resultar complicada en una vida ya más posterior. Entonces hay que saber diferenciar qué es una emergencia, porque si ya te tomaste una, no te vas a tomar otra después de 20 horas, digámoslo así, porque, ok, fue una emergencia y por eso la tomaste, pero después de 15 horas pudiste haber utilizado cualquier otro método de anticoncepción. Entonces, al no hacer un buen tratamiento, puede generar problemas hormonales, esta mujer puede tener alteración de su ciclo menstrual, dolores de cabeza, náuseas, vómitos, mareos. No sabemos si más adelante algún problema dentro de su endometrio, de su útero o de sus mismos ovarios. Entonces, porque estamos usando una cantidad elevada de hormonas, y si son muy repetitivas, ya es una persona que en verdad no cuida su sexualidad y es una irresponsabilidad fuerte. Eso es lo que puedo acotar por el momento y como te digo, esto más es ya de responsabilidad mutua. Creo que ya tenemos mucho mayor conocimiento y todos ya somos mucho más responsables de lo que deseamos y necesitamos para nuestro cuerpo. Yo creo que hemos visto unos programas donde hemos visto que lo mejor es mantenernos mucho la responsabilidad de nosotros mismos por nuestra salud y que necesitamos mejorar la calidad de vida, ejercicio, comer más sano y cuidar en esta parte reproductiva también.
Yeah, and just to talk about the ovarian hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Think about like when you take a plan B, it's paused. You inhibit it, and you create a new cycle. Think about like if again, unfortunately, there's not enough studies that tells us, and I can't quote, but I can speculate. This isn't a hypothesis, not a theory or a practice, but the constant interruption of any hormone has effects. So, like David is saying, if this person continues to take Plan B and their hormonal cycle changes, their menstrual cycle changes abruptly, because that's exactly what this does. It cuts it abruptly. So, it tells the brain to literally, to the hypothalamus to not produce any estrogen. So, it doesn't, the I'm sorry, the follicles don't connect with ovaries don't are not stimulated. That's exactly what happens. So again and again, if you do that, I'm pretty sure in the near future we will find some studies that will give us what are the real consequences of people that have taken this, like it's a anti-conceptive. I'm sorry, pill.
Yeah.
Sí, sobre todo porque, a ver, depende del tiempo del ciclo donde uno se toma esta pastilla, te retrasa la duración del folículo. En otra, en cambio, te cambia la estructura del endometrio del útero. Entonces, aparte de eso, de que alocan en la parte del hipotálamo y él ya no sabe qué hacer. Entonces, hay un desequilibrio completo porque vuelves loco todo tu cuerpo.
Exactly. And that's a good point.
Sobre todo la confusión a nivel del cerebro, porque dice, oye, tengo que producir, no tengo que producir.
Exactly.
Entonces, eso va a generar diferentes tipos de problemas, no solo en la parte reproductiva, sino también en la parte también de nuestro hipotálamo, que no sabe si secretar o no secretar hormonas, en qué momento de nuevo lo vuelvo. O sea, como decirlo, es como reiniciar el computador muchas veces en una semana, digamos así. Entonces, en algún momento se va a volver loco, digámoslo ahora.
We need to understand what is a woman biologically to understand why these chemical reactions happen. right? So the ovaries are telling the brain, it's like, we need to create an egg for reproduction, right? We need to create a follicle. Why? Because we need to reproduce. And so what happens is when the estrogen, I'm sorry, is constantly cut off. What happens is, like, the hypothalamus is saying, okay, we're not going to stimulate the ovaries. So when the ovaries are not stimulated, then you start producing progesterone. So which is telling them, like, oh, the egg has been already, it's out there. It's out there waiting for the sperm to come out. So we need to understand, when you cut that so often and abruptly, it does bring mood swings. It does bring a lot of psychological. There's a lot of cases of depression and anxiety, because, like David is saying, your hypothalamus is confused, because you're supposed to have this every month on the same day. And now imagine if that's changed abruptly every single time. There's a lot of cases where women that are in birth control for many years, they lose interest in sex, libido. They just their hypothalamus doesn't know what to do, because you're constantly stopping the effect of having a baby, because that's the whole point of the ovaries communicating to the hypothalamus, to stimulate the ovaries. And it's funny that think about how important sex is. And we don't talk about that. The sex is almost seen as a taboo, but biologically, it's something the human race needs, and it stimulates you in a positive way. We were designed to do and act in sexual activities.
Yeah, it's one of our biological things. It's that God gave it to us, and it's one of those. It's sacred. It's sacred. It's very sacred in that sense, and that's why you feel such a great high there from it too, right? And it's that sacred act, connecting with it. But with that, it does come a lot of responsibility, man. That's why we're talking about it today, because we try to devalue the sacredness of the action with the contraceptive methods.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. I think so. There are 4 seasons in nature, right? And a woman has 4 cycles. And so her body is naturally preparing and anticipating like fertilization of an egg, and then the body's preparing for a baby, and then the body sees there's no baby, so then it releases the lining. And this is a cycle that continues to go on throughout the months. It's not just your menstruation cycle. You have your follicular, your luteal, your ovulatory, and your menstruation. And this is ongoing. And I think we need more education on women's bodies, because a lot of young women don't know that there are 4 cycles. I think sex ed is promoted a lot, and what is in sex ed, it's not about what a male body function is to do, and it doesn't focus on what a woman's body is made to do. It's all about contraception and sex. And so I think our society is promoting a big disservice to our young children and our young adults, because they're not stupid, and we're not animals just made to have sex and seek pleasure. I think with the promotion of contraception and birth control, there's been a dissolution of what it was made for. Sex is for reproducing, it's for reproduction, and it's also for relationships. So like you guys were just saying, yes, you have these intense chemical releases in your body that are made for bonding with that person, right, that you are having sex with. And the more that you do that with, end up bonding with certain people, right? But I think birth control right now, they promote it like a Tic Tac, or just take it. There's no effects to it. You'll be fine. Even I'll circle back to Plan B, right? When President Biden, he actually was promoting a harsher abortion pill that he got on the news and said, "Oh, it's like taking a Tylenol and having your period," which was major misinformation for women who were taking these pills and then experiencing, an abortion in their bathroom, and were very grieved with what was happening in their bodies. But especially with Plan B, like you guys are saying, there's such a chemical. It's very destructive to the body. Number one, and number two, they're both made to prevent a pregnancy, right? So Plan B is disturbing the cycle so that like there will be no egg implantation. And even I was just researching that even birth control can be used as an abortificant. So like it also has the power, if an egg is fertilized, to release the egg. And it's just mind blowing to me, and it gets me so frustrated because the human body is not seen as sacred anymore. It's almost like, okay, like men have beautiful virtues where they are protectors and providers. I think men are very noble, but what society has done is kind of like torn them down to just kind of like to like extract from women, or to just extract and expect sex from women, right? And then for women, they've turned them into like, well, you're inferior to a man, so you have to like strive to be exactly like a man, and that's been seen through like sexual behaviors system, because birth, right? Because then when you have women who are genuinely trying to conceive a child, they've done so much damage to their bodies that they don't even know what was taking place, because this has been promoted by doctors and gynecologists. Then they find out how you lean into your fertility, what's beneficial for making a hospital environment for a baby, so there's just so much misinformation, and it's just a huge disservice, I think, to our society right now.
We also have to think about like the effects on the impact on sexual attraction. And why do I bring this into account? Because there's a behavior change. Think about this. Let's say birth control has taken that libido away from you, and you don't see men that attractive anymore, but you want to have a couple. Why are you having a couple for? Just think about that question. It's not about anymore about procreation. It's not about, even having sex or being attracted. But why would you have, if you're a woman, why would you have a man by your side?
Wait, can you just restate the question?
So, like, for example, the hormone effect on birth control pills has a psychological impact.
Mm-hmm.
If it impacts the sexual attraction and the libido. So women are affected with that birth control. So when they are selecting a partner, they're not selecting them for the attraction. They're not selecting them for the attraction, the libido, the that they like them. Now they're going more into being, okay, can he provide security? And that's a common psychological, right? If you're not picking from that, you got to pick from something else.
Well, that's so interesting. That's so interesting.
Yes.
I feel like when you combine sex in a relationship, right? Because of the bonding happening, right? There's your endorphins are kicking in. There's another chemical that kicks in, and I feel like it kind of like puts on these rose-colored glasses where you're kind of like you're not awake to the reality of the relationship. Like if there are red flags in your relationship, it's kind of like, oh, well, let's just have sex because that'll mask the problems, and then it's almost like a perpetual cycle, right? Like, so sex can mask, I think, in my opinion, can mask real problems in your relationship. Which, like, right, we're talking about a contraceptive. So women are having sex with their partners, with their boyfriends. So I think they are prioritizing sex over. That's so funny you asked that question, because I think they're prioritizing sex over whether or not he can provide a stable household, or can he be a good father, or I feel like we have an opposite take on that.
Oh no, I agree with the what you're saying is that, but there's a psychological effect because of the pill, the birth control pill. It makes women not be too attractive to the male partner. It inhibits that. It takes away the sexual attraction, and because of because of these hormonal change, I'm not saying everyone, but there's been studies where when you take away the birth control pills from a woman, they actually start to like men with more masculine features. That's the funny thing. That's what I'm saying. When they're on the pill, because they don't have that sexual attraction, they're looking for something outside of that testosterone that women seek. And what is the outside of that testosterone level that a man can give? So it's a psychological effect. And if you don't feel sexually attracted, that means you're not having healthy sex as a partner. That is even more scary because your libido is low. So you have a partner more for other reasons than attraction, love, biological, necessities, et cetera. That is what is staggering about the studies happening with birth control. And it's kind of scary because in these studies, we can see how women that have birth control are starting to like more of men with more of a soft look, more of that, having more of a feminist look. And David, I don't know if David can explain the chemistry happening in the body.
Claro, mira, esto viene de digamos, algo psicológico en la parte de escoger bien la especie, o esa necesidad de escoger digamos, al macho alfa de la sociedad que te rodea. Cuando la mujer está por ovular, necesita los rasgos más masculinos porque necesitas tener unas crías que puedan ser fuertes, que puedan sobrevivir y que puedan tener muchas más oportunidades dentro de esa sociedad. Por eso, antes de la ovulación, las mujeres como que se fijan psicológicamente en este tipo de rasgos, este tipo de hongos, porque es el más fuerte, el que puede tener buenos genes para la procreación y que este nuevo individuo, este niño, pueda ser, digamos, el líder de la manada, digamos así. Pero ya cuando pasa esta parte hormonal, ya en cambio, ya buscan, si se dice en la parte psicológica, con rasgos menos rudos, porque ya pasó esa parte de la selección de especies, digamos así. Entonces, esto es algo netamente psicológico. Y también va cargado por la parte hormonal, porque son diferentes etapas hormonales. Entonces, esto también va ligado a la parte también de la atracción. Entonces, si tú pones una hormona que te va a alterar la parte hormonal, eh, vas a generar ciclos diferentes, vas a generar atracciones diferentes. Pero aquí yo creo que hemos visto muchos cuestionamientos, pero yo creo que aquí tenemos que educarnos todos, educar sobre todo a los más jóvenes, es el hecho de una sexualidad responsable. ¿Qué es tener una sexualidad responsable? El mismo hecho de ya comenzar a tener intimidad con una pareja del sexo opuesto, que es la única razón por la cual podemos generar una nueva vida, es que existe una responsabilidad mayor primero con tu cuerpo, porque tienes que saber escoger primero a tu pareja. Segundo, en el momento en el cual tienen esta actividad o esta relación, porque al conocer el cuerpo, su mujer, la mujer, su ciclo menstrual, se puede aplicar lo que se llama el método anticoncepción del ritmo, siempre y cuando la mujer tenga un periodo, digámosle, eh, rutinario, ¿no? Ahí podemos utilizar eso sin opción a ninguna pastilla anticoncepción. Pero la sociedad de ahora vive de apuro y no espera. ¿Ya? Y sobre todo un adolescente nunca espera. Entonces uno está más urgido. Ya a nuestra edad ya somos más pasivos y pensamos mucho.
Claro.
Pero de joven no. La misma presencia hormonal hace que no esperemos.
Claro. And I just wanted to add, as a matter of fact, Otto, I agreed with what you say, how the use of sex in a relationship. I completely agree with what you said. So I just wanted to make sure that one thing wasn't confused with the other. But it's true. It's true. And what David is saying too, it's the responsibility, and also we need, like from a biological point of view also, when you are young in your youth, especially in women, it's so important to not only educate people sexually, but to understand like the changes that are happening, because like I said, the ovaries are talking to the hypothalamus, and that's how they're starting to understand the reproductive system.
Mm.
And like David is saying, it's funny because I was just telling I told a friend years ago. He was like, he wanted to, um, he wanted to be with he wanted to have a baby, right? And he was like, oh, my wife is always in a bad mood, blah blah blah. And I was like, does she take birth control pills? I asked him, and he was like, no. I was like, okay, so wait until the ninth day. She'll probably be more attracted to you, like David was saying. She'll probably start looking at you, look a little tough, go to the gym, buff up a little bit. She'll probably come crawling to you because of it. And it's not that the woman is being promiscuous. It's just the call of nature in chemistry and biology for women to be funny because and it's funny because pills stops birth control pills stops that natural cycle of how women should feel. And Autumn, you ever heard say like women are unpredictable with their emotions?
Yeah.
I could tell you that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
If women didn't take birth control pills, they will be super predictable.
Well, even like that's why I love that David mentioned the natural family planning, right? Because like so when let's say you take Lauren's on birth control, right? She is experiencing the cycles still of her body, right? So if you're ovulating, you tend to be more sad, right? Or wait, no, is it your luteal phase? No, I think it's in your luteal phase where you just start to hit a low, and then in your follicular phase, you have more energy. In your menstrual cycle, you're shedding the lining, so you kind of feel tired. You want to do things more slowly, and then there's another in your other cycle, you're like ready to take on the world. So it's like if she leans into those phases and kind of like she eats according to her cycle, that's what I've been learning about actually, like eating according to your cycle, leaning into the emotions you feel during your cycle. Honestly, right, like you're saying, it tends to make more sense and you don't feel so like out of whack. But right, like when you're on birth control, it's like you're putting a pause on all of that. And I know some women still bleed on birth control, but it's not a real period. It's like a false bleed that's happening. And so your body, think about a woman who's on birth control for like 15 years. Her body has not released what needs to be released. It's actually crazy to think about.
Mm. Mm. What's so funny? So, ever since she's been educating me on it, like, I could sometimes, like, tell, like, which phase along she's in on, like, the 4 phases, like, the 4 seasons of the month. So I'm like, it's great because, like, she's been educating me for it, which I, like, like, why would I, like, need to know that as I'm growing up? I'm playing sports more than anything rather than picking up, like, until I have a girlfriend, right? Until I have a girlfriend, she starts telling me about it. I'm like, oh, it's all making sense now. So it's the education way that could also connect us men to adhere or to tier along with that cycle base. Like we could assist. So the moods are gonna come either way. Like we were just saying, like it's gonna go up and down. You're gonna be sad at some points because not because you're just sad, but because your body is just going through.
And this is why women are like, if they didn't have, let's say normally most women that wouldn't take birth control, we're supposed to have a baby, let's go, and then suddenly like are we or we're not? Okay, we're stopping this, and now I'm prolonging. You gotta remember, the damn, I forgot the name of it. The not estrogen. What's the other hormone for this? So what happens? Your cortisol levels go up. It produces stress. The body doesn't know it. Think about it. Our brain doesn't like to be uncomfortable. Our brain likes to be comfortable. It doesn't. That's why we have a hard time adapting. Correct? To change abruptly. Think about like every month, your body is confused. Wouldn't your brain get stressed about the communication happening? And then your body's trying to do something biologically natural, and it gets disrupted all the time. Just think about that. I was going to ask David about what he knows about that kind of in chemistry.
Bueno, sí. A ver, primero que todo, todo funciona de una manera adecuada. Si todo funciona de una manera adecuada en nuestro organismo, pasa tranquilo, nosotros mismos generamos respuestas correctas. Pero cuando tú alteras el equilibrio, como en todo, produce caos. Y este caos va a estar generado en diferentes partes de nuestro organismo. Comenzando por la parte hormonal, alteraciones de conducta, alteraciones de comportamiento, cefaleas, mareos. También puede haber otra etapa que es la parte celular y la parte también de nuestro hígado, digámoslo así, que es donde la mayoría de los medicamentos o todo lo que nosotros nos administramos de vía oral va a metabolizarse en el hígado. También todo esto puede producir una hepatotoxicidad si abusamos de muchos medicamentos o si abusamos de comida. Entonces vamos a tener alteraciones no solo en el comportamiento, en la parte cerebral, en la parte hipotálamo, en la parte de nuestros órganos reproductores, porque cambiamos el equilibrio normal de nuestro cuerpo. Y todo esto genera cambios y reacciones que nuestro cuerpo avisa de que no está bien. Cefaleas, náuseas, irritabilidad, baja de líbido. Eso ya nos indica que nuestro cuerpo no está bien. Son alertas. O menstruaciones que no son menstruaciones, digámoslo así, de que son sangrados, hinchazón, dolor abdominal, ya digo, y hasta hepatotoxicidad, porque no sabemos también cómo está nuestro hígado. Entonces, todo cambia. Están concatenados. Entonces, un desequilibrio provoca muchas reacciones en cadena y nuestro cuerpo responde a esto mediante estas alertas para indicar que no estamos bien. Algo no está bien, no estamos bien, ponga atención. Entonces yo creo que hay muchas formas de evitar. Primero, control, saber y conocer nuestro cuerpo, educarnos, no solo nosotros, sino también a nuestra pareja o nuestras parejas, porque igual hay personas que tienen múltiples parejas. Entonces, esa educación, yo creo que la base de todo siempre va a ser es comunicación y comunicación, porque así aprendemos a conocer, incluso si estos métodos están causando algún problema a la pareja.
Mm-hmm. The scary thing is, as you're talking about the birth pills and the effects, we don't even know how it could react because there hasn't been enough studies done about how can it react uh, depression pills. And the reason why pills produces a lot, you start taking it from a young age. It's there. We know that. But what happens when you add now another pill to that? And there's not enough studies yet. I know there's investigations and all that, but there's not enough studies. I can't tell you what the effect is. But if the off balance of your hormones created depression, now because of that, you got to take antidepressive pills. So, and again, it's all about that confusion generated in your brain, and it's sad to see that. You know what? It's almost like David is saying, like there needs to be a better sexual education, not only for men and women, but also as a couple. How are you going to, especially if you're not planning to have a baby, let's say, right? You can still have sex, but just be careful around the time frames, correct? And use other mechanisms that are more natural and safe. I wanted to ask Autumn something. Me, David, and Kevin would never know what it feels. But
Para acotar algo más, es que también, a ver, ya una vez que se deja muchas veces de tomar estos anticonceptivos orales, cuando la pareja ya decide tener un hijo, muchas veces se dificulta por todos estos cambios bruscos que esta información falsa que le metes a tu organismo. Porque es una información falsa, porque es algo exógeno que ingresa a nuestro organismo, que hace que actúe de una manera como nosotros queremos y no como debería comportarse. Entonces ya, si nuestro hipotálamo está confuso, no sabe en qué momento enviar las hormonas adecuadas, la cantidad de hormonas adecuadas. Si me han interrumpido tanto el ciclo, dice, ya no voy a generar más hormonas, o sea, ya no voy a hacer madurar folículos. Entonces ahí vienen ya los problemas, ya cuando decides ya de manera responsable decir
different behavior about sexual attraction to a male, because think about it. If you don't have that high libido, then you look for a man that is not so masculine. What is something that is close to a man that doesn't have masculine features? So this yes, it changes the behavior. Hormones, we need to understand, hormones change behaviors. They are almost like a production of how we feel. They're so important and relevant in our life. We need it, but we need it to be balanced. When you off balance it, it creates a new you, a different version of you. Even if you are against it, and it's not about your mental conviction, it's about your biological chemistry inside that is dictating you to change. And it's something almost like, again, because what happened, like David is saying, it's like you're lying to your hypothalamus all the time. And then if you lie to someone so many times, you're going to believe it, right? It's like, we don't need to produce any more of this. Who cares? So it's interesting because hormones definitely change behaviors. It does. It has a big effect on them. I wanted to ask Autumn. Like I said, me, Kevin, and David would never know what this looks like, and I'm just curious. Autumn.
Yeah.
What does it feel to have a period? Like, is it uncomfortable? And again, like, I'm curious because, we're talking about women's health, and probably is a bad but beautiful experience. I don't know, because I could never experience that.
Mhm. Well, I will say every woman's period is different. So like mine is very different from my best friend's period because she never experienced cramps at all. She says like it just happens upon her. Like she'll wake up and she just has it. And for me, it's the opposite case. I get very severe cramping that will last like I'll know it's coming like 2 days before, I start experiencing cramps. And then when it arrives, like sometimes I can't get out of bed. It's very painful, which is not normal. I've learned. But yeah, so you typically like your bleeding days will differ among women. I get it for 8 days. I know women who get it for 3, maybe 4. So mine's a little out of whack, but working to prepare to bring life into the world. And I think it's such a gift. It is so beautiful to know like this is what my body can do and this is what it's preparing for. And it's actually a superpower. Like it's nothing, like it doesn't make us little, like there's nothing weird about it. It's honestly really cool. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where one of the main hosts said her daughter had her period. And so she invited all of her female friends over, the mom, and they had tea and cookies. And all of the women just spoke about their own experiences with their menstruation cycle and gave her daughter like advice and tips. And I just thought it was so beautiful, like how the women came together and kind of like passed down this knowledge. I feel like that's something that we should do more of, and just like bring more awareness to what it really means to have a period and what it means to go and become a woman, right? Because when you get your period, they say you've become a woman. And it really is, it's such a beautiful thing to know, like, there's so much detail in every phase you're going through, every cycle you're going through. And it is helpful sometimes to just curl up with a heating pad, have a cup of tea and, sleep the cramps away. But yeah, it makes me proud to be a woman, and it's really beautiful.
That's awesome. I'm pretty sure, Kevin, you see her in those moments, and we probably experienced that same thing, and we see somebody cramp up, and we're like, we don't even know sometimes what to do. Like, you want a painkiller, you know. we see the pain, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about your particular experience seeing your loved one, with cramps and going through the cycle.
Oh yeah, like I don't sometimes I don't really know what to do. I'm like, you want a blanket, you want some water, you want a hug, I'll give you a hug. Like those little things. Are just like I think it's like the little things that help out. Like just I guess presents being there, but then it's like different stuff. I don't really like. I don't really know where to assist. I try, the best effort, the best thing to do, what I realize is just to give it effort, because then that it gets recognized, and when it's like an emotional whirlpool too, it gets recognized to a 10 times the max. Or it could be flipped the other way, where it's like you're not doing enough. But it's never like that.
Maybe she gets better when you eat bananas in front of her.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
David, te quería preguntar algo.
Eres
En
un
el
buen
punto,
tipo,
en
Kevin, eres un buen tipo.
he's the man. David, desde un punto de vista químico, ¿qué tú consideras que es, qué es lo que ocurre cuando, desde un punto químico, cuando se produce el estrógeno?
Wow. Bueno, se produce el estrógeno, es la hormona femenina, y tiene que generar todos los cambios en la parte femenina que necesitas hacerlo. Como tú dices, y ya lo vimos, el hipotálamo tiene que generar una cantidad adecuada para mantener cada una de las partes, digamos así, de la reproducción, parte de un buen ciclo, y que no haya un desequilibrio. Yo creo que nuestro cuerpo sabe la cantidad que necesitamos y lo que necesitamos. Cuando no puede producirse, vienen los desequilibrios y las enfermedades, o en este caso las complicaciones como las que tiene Oro, que quizás hay una parte de su cuerpo que no puede tener la cantidad suficiente, o que anatómicamente hay algo que impide tener un ciclo más amigable para ella. Pero para eso lo tiene a Kevin, que para el próximo ciclo va a comer mucha banana del hecho de tener a tu pareja, sino de comprenderla en el ciclo donde hay situaciones bonitas y otras no tanto, porque llega un momento donde también su humor cambia. Y estar ahí, aunque sea para que te digan algo o se enojen con uno, Pero es bueno porque sirve de liberación también para ellas, porque están en una ruleta de emociones y no es culpa de ellas que te digan alguna cosa que muchas veces te enoja. Yo
Claro.
creo que parte de la ocasión es eso, y tener ese acompañamiento también, porque nosotros no sabemos lo que sucede y nosotros no sentimos lo que ellas sienten. Sabemos biológicamente lo que sucede o lo que va a suceder, pero el acompañamiento es lo importante. Y esas hormonas lo que van a hacer es que tengan todo ese carrusel de emociones que tienen las mujeres. Entonces, nosotros no tenemos tantas como ellas. Yo sí considero de que hay que darle una mayor valía a ellas en ese punto, bueno, sobre todo en la parte hormonal, esos desequilibrios hormonales, la parte de las pastillas que te provoca otro desequilibrio, de que se muevan las cosas hacia un sentido diferente, eh, y que no se vuelvan locas, es un gran mérito de ellas.
No, and to vouch. Remember, I was telling you like women's hormonal cycles are make women very predictable. On the other hand, men testosterone doesn't make them. We're very unpredictable. And I will give you a good example of that behavior. Right? Put a man to watch their football team, and they're winning. What do you think happens there? Testosterone, right? It's unpredictable. It's not a cycle like women. Women has a routine cycle. If it's healthy, it has a very routine cycle, and you can predict the behaviors. Men, put them in. There's studies that have put men in a gun room, and the testosterone go high. That's how unpredictable we are with our hormones, as opposed to women that all those way more complex. They have a steady cycle. But unfortunately, for those that are on birth control pills, it gets interrupted. It gets interrupted, and it brings a different type of off balance, emotional, psychological, chemical, biological. And it has a big effect on these things. You know what? One of the things that I am perhaps a little concerned is how can we educate our younger generation on how to be more responsible with one, taking care of our women if they're our partners, so they don't fall into taking pills or something that is going to disrupt their hormonal balance. What ideas do you have? I would like to start with Autumn because Autumn is our G star today.
It's a great question. I think there needs to be a lot of open communication. I think there needs to be a heavy emphasis on nutrition, right? Because what we eat and put into our bodies is for nourishment, for longevity, right? And to have good health. And a lot of our reproductive health stems from what we eat. It comes from fragrances, not wearing fragrances, and really just honing into how to be the healthiest version of yourself. And I think that needs to be taught from a young age. I wasn't taught that. The doctors that I would go to, they really wouldn't. They would just, like I was mentioning, promote birth control so heavily. There wasn't let's go over your diet, let's go over your nutritional state, let's really make sure that you're healthy all around. And it's honestly just about having open communication. It's also educating the younger generation, which I feel like is starting to happen. A lot of people are coming to learn about the history of birth control as healthcare for women, and it makes you just take control of your own health and seeing what's available to you, right? And honestly, when you do your own research, it kind of you become more well informed. You don't just take things for face value. And I think the way to educate our younger generation is just to encourage open conversations, encourage them to read these resources, encourage them to understand that their body is amazing and it has a function and a role and it's awesome. But we really need to dive deep and we need to educate ourselves and not just accept anymore birth control as a band-aid, because it also like has very bad health effects, right? Like a lot of people end up with blood clots, right? Or they end up having strokes or heart attacks, and it's the cause of birth control is the cause of that. So I'd say, yeah, communication and just research too, and nutrition.
I think to add, I love what you said, Autumn. I think also as a couple to plan, like these are the days we have to restrain if we don't have want to have a baby,
Yeah.
because it also takes about, like you were saying, like responsibility, but also control. Especially if you love somebody, it's gonna be hard. It's like I was like, I'm gonna go to my mom's house for these couple days.
Well, that's the beauty of natural family planning, right? Because the woman's body, because David was mentioning this too, like because of the cycles, like, I think you can only get pregnant really like for 12 hours on like the day that you guys do the deed. And then like the man's sperm lives in her body for 5 days, right? So she can get pregnant after that. But it's honestly like it's really difficult to conceive. It's difficult to get pregnant. And so like, right, if you guys lean into that cycle and really understand, like, okay, like, well, when I'm ovulating, maybe we should abstain, right? It's just, again, open communication and not being embarrassed to have those conversations.
I have a question for all of you guys. Like, let's say let's say like a lot of women are educated on the effects of birth control pills on their body, but they still decide to take it. Why you think it's the number one reason why they continue to take it, although they know it has an effect on them? I don't know who wants to go first. Who want? I see everyone raising their hand, so calm down, guys.
I think like sometimes they take it to try to please their man, right? Or sometimes like sometimes I also hear like when Autumn gets back from her GYN, like the doctors will recommend it to make the period less harmful, but not harmful, but more or less painful, like to take the cramps away. But it's not really like taking the cramps away. Like as like we learn, as I learned from Autumn, like it doesn't take the cramps away. It just it slows down the cycle. Like what we've been talking about, it just slows down the cycle. It doesn't stop it. It's an abrupt stop, and then it has to open up again. Um, so it's interesting because they'll take it because they're doctors, maybe to please, maybe not to have a child because they also know the responsibility of the child. Maybe fear of like also being pregnant. Like there might be like many reasons of like why someone would take it even knowing it's harm because of X, Y, Z. I guess the way to educate the young woman about it is so they could, if they feel comfortable in X, Y, and Z, maybe they'll feel more comfortable having sex without taking the contraceptives. Like maybe there might even be like a married couple out there that even takes these birth control and contraceptive pills just so they don't have a kid. But it's just it goes down into maybe feeling confident in the subsections of of the responsibilities of sex, like just feeling confident in the sections. That's what I think. I think they just take it because of lack of in the subsections.
What do you think, David?
A ver, eh, aquí hay que mirar varios aspectos. Uno, que como vimos, cuando estés en una situación de que cuando estás con tu pareja no te puedes detener, porque la misma fase hormonal pide un encuentro. Entonces, eso no lo puedes controlar. Aparte de eso, porque esta sociedad se está creando en la inmediatez. Necesitas algo inmediato para todo. Entonces, actualmente la sociedad quiere todo en el momento. Entonces, como le puedes dar todo, los métodos anticonceptivos, es solamente ve a esto, de todo esto y no pasó nada. Tranquila, vamos. ¿Ya? Segundo, estos métodos anticonceptivos lo que hacen es que igual el ciclo te va a llegar de una manera, digamos, engañando a tu propio organismo, pero va a llegar el ciclo menstrual si es que no estás embarazada. Entonces, la preocupación es cuando no llega. Ahí viene la preocupación de un posible embarazo. Pero este ciclo menstrual va a llegar atrasado o quizás en menos tiempo. Y el desequilibrio lo sufre nuestro cerebro. Bueno, y otras partes mismo de los ovarios, los lúteros, las trompas de falopio, todo esto se ve un cambio nada más por dentro que no lo podemos ver. Eh, pero no hay algo que te impida no tomarlas. Tú lo haces porque, y se hace porque está en la inmediatez, no te puedes controlar, las mismas hormonas muchas veces hacen que no te controles, también depende en qué fase del ciclo esté la mujer y donde se controla menos, porque si está cerca de la ovulación, el deseo va a aumentar y nadie se va a detener ahí. Nadie. Entonces lo más fácil es o no nos cuidamos, esta es la solución, pero en sí no es la solución. La solución viene desde el mismo momento de haber utilizado otro método anticonceptivo, porque ahí lo que no se está, digamos, teniendo una irracionalidad porque no estás controlando la parte de alguna enfermedad que puede ser por contacto. Entonces, hay un doble problema. Pero como estamos regidos por hormonas y por la inmediatez de que puedo tener algo en este momento que me puede auxiliar, entre comillas, vamos, dele. Vamos a darle. Entonces, por eso se sigue. Y la educación, y tenemos que educarnos, yo creo que eso nos hace falta a todos, a conocer más del ciclo, no solo nosotros como hombres, sino las mujeres, no solo como hombres, para saber los diferentes tipos de comportamiento y cuándo cuando no se puede.
Así es. Autumn, what are your thoughts?
Um, you guys bring up a lot of great points. I think some reasons why women would take birth control is one, motherhood is seen as a burden and a disease right now in our society.
You hit it on a high note on that one.
Yeah, and it's very sad because like women are life bearers. They bring life into this world, and motherhood is a very important job. So is fatherhood, honestly. But I think birth control and abortion, they're looked at as ways to eradicate a disease, and sadly, like that's why a lot of women take it. They also take it because there's this notion of like, well, it's not fair that a man can't get pregnant and they don't have to carry a baby for 9 months, and it's almost like a prideful reaction of like, well, I want to be like a man and not have a burden, and I want to have sex freely, and they want to be able to sleep around and not have a consequence. And when you remove sex from what it was intended for, which is to bring a child into this world, preferably in marriage, right? You like messed up the equation, and that's why a lot of women today, they really like almost like they're skeeved out by the notion of motherhood, and so it's easy for a woman to take it. But then, later on, there's a lot of women who, yes, they're successful, they're incredible women who are crushing it in the workforce, and yet later on in life, it just happens. Like they want a family, they want to be a mom, they want to get married, they want to have children, and sometimes women can't, right? For whatever reasons, but it's a natural calling to a woman's heart. And I love that in the beginning of this conversation, I think before we started filming, you had asked, like, what is a woman? And a woman is, she's a daughter, she's a sister, she's a friend, she's a wife, and she's a mother, and she's an individual who can nurture from her heart. And I think a lot of women now, they see that it's been demonized to nurture and to like love from your heart. And it's really one of the things that makes a woman unique is her ability to care and nurture and just like welcome people in. And so I think like by taking a birth control pill, it gives an illusion of a false sense of freedom that I can use my body in whatever way I want. And that's what's being used as healthcare. It just still blows my mind. I'm like, what? Okay.
I think there's also, and I'm gonna reference to all of us, and I would love to hear your answer, guys, on this question. We talk about, I'd love to hear, Autumn's perspective. Like because if let's say we know women's cycle, menstrual cycle, right? We already know like the days that she's gonna be heavily, a high possibility of being pregnant, right? If you have sex with her. Why is it that it's a taboo to wear a condom when you already have a life partner? And that's the other thing. Somebody has to invent something better than a condom. FY.
Oh, so the question is like when you have your life partner. I don't think it should be a. I know, right? I don't know why it's such a taboo to use it when you have a life partner, right? Because it's like, hey, the condom is just it's another contraceptive for the guys, to be safe during. No, I hate to say it as safe, because it's like what do you mean like save it, like yeah, it's hard. I haven't experienced kids. I don't know speculating, right? So I don't really know, so I'm hearing from different experiences that other people have and learning from their perspective. So what I've learned is that it's hard to raise a kid, and it's hard to do a lot of changes in your life, as it should change your life. uh, so I guess as lifelong partners, I don't think like a condom should be. Uh, I know like it shouldn't be used because you guys are lifelong and it is that natural process. It's the bonding. You don't want to interrupt something or have a piece in the middle between the bond. But at the same time, you also don't want another interruption, which might be kids. Again, my speculation, because I don't have, but they might like it could create another bond. So I guess what is your take on the lifelong longevity?
Damn. Kelly put her on the spot.
Well, so like let's put it in the context of marriage, right? So to use a condom in marriage, I think it's like negating the fact that like you both in your wedding vows, right? The purpose of sex is to restate your wedding vows through your body, and that's why it's so sacred. And so basically, you both are laying down your lives for each other, so that includes your body, and like you guys are becoming one. There's a lot of beauty happening. So to use a condom in the middle of the act, like while you're married, you're basically preventing life. It is what it is. You're preventing life from happening, where the act of sex is you guys love each other so much that that love can produce a fruit, which is a child, right? Which is the greatest thing ever, because God is creator, and the fact that He gave us that ability to create is really beautiful. And I think that's it's always under attack.
Because then if you're just gonna use sex, to reproduce, then you'll do the date where she's ovulating, only on the date when she's ovulating.
Well, right, and like natural family planning can be used to like let's say the family is having financial issues, right? You guys need to abstain. That's also why natural family planning.
The sex is good because it's that way for life. It's bonding and experience. It's like natural family planning. It could be seen as also a way of preventing.
Well, it's also a way of the heart, right? So every time you have sex, you should be life in your heart, because life is not always going to come, right? There are many couples who struggle with infertility, And it's a real struggle for them, but in their hearts, every time they come together as one, their hearts are so open for life. And that's a good examination of conscience. Like, are you open to life, or are you having sex for yourself, right, and your own pleasure? And all of that, I think, too. To say, our culture today is really ingrained in the culture of death. There is not a culture of life. So even like this discussion we're having right now, like a lot of people will be like, thinking that I'm crazy for saying this, but you should have an openness to life, because it's something bigger than yourself. And if you can come together as one with the person you love, like, and have a child come from that, that's a beautiful thing. So long-winded response. I'm sorry.
No, que piensas?
Primero, eres malo. ¿Por qué le haces esa pregunta a Kevin estando ahora al lado?
Damn, David made that 3 under the
Lo veo
bus.
sudando.
I swear to God,
sudando.
I swear to God, it was not done with those.
Lo veo sudando, frío. Si estuviera ahí, lo tocaría y lo sentiría frío, helado, sudando, sudoroso.
Autumn is gonna kill you, Kevin. I'm so sorry, bro. No, I'm messing with you, Autumn.
Right. It's like you see it like the bees dripping down. You should see like hear my heartbeats beating fast.
No, it's a very I would say it's a very sensitive topic.
Mira, primero, todos sabemos, bueno, por cultura, que uno cuando utiliza un preservativo es para, primero, como un método anticonceptivo y para no transmitir enfermedades, ¿no? Y lo utilizas cuando tienes múltiples parejas. Entonces, cuando esto ya va a una relación marital o de pareja, no solo marital, sino con la pareja con la cual tú ya comienzas a convivir, no quieres traer esa parte de que se utiliza el preservativo cuando tienes múltiples parejas y para evitar la transmisión de enfermedades, ¿no? Entonces, ya cuando tienes una pareja estable, dejas de usar porque se asocia psicológicamente a que tienes múltiples parejas. Entonces, ya cuando tienes ya una exclusividad, ya como que dejas de usarlo y utilizas otros métodos para evitar en su momento, porque tienes que planificar. Yo creo que lo más responsable es la planificación de una nueva vida. Entonces, ya cuando tienes una pareja estable, comienzas a planificar y que dentro de esa planificación, si viene un hijo, lo aceptas con todo el amor del mundo, tanto de tu pareja y de tu parte. ¿Qué puede suceder? Sí, puede suceder. Entonces, yo creo que cuando tú ya tienes una pareja estable, una pareja con la cual tú ya compartes, mantienes una mayor afinidad y ya una actividad sexual, ya dejas de utilizar el preservativo porque se lo asocia más a cuando tienes múltiples parejas, cuando vas a tener múltiples parejas. Entonces, eso también le da algo de exclusividad y le das la exclusividad que se merece a la pareja con la que estás en ese momento. Y ahí vienen otros tipos de métodos. Entonces, yo creo que por eso ya no lo utilizas como anticoncepción ni como para prevenir enfermedades de transmisión. Ya cuando tienes tu pareja estable, ya lo dejas de usar y utilizas otros métodos por eso, por que ahí tú das la exclusividad a esa pareja. Por eso se deja usar muchas veces el preservativo.
Claro. And I like David's response, and also Kevin and Autumn's. I do think like when it's true. Like why would you use a condom with someone you trust and love? Because it creates like a barrier also. But also, how do you plan to have a life with someone, especially when you know you are in that age and stage of high reproduction that you can conceive. And I do think it's like behavior as well. Like when you're with somebody for so long with a partner, you can kind of tell like there's consequences if your wife gets pregnant once more, she can die. There's very sensitive pregnancies. So I do think it's the planning of it too. Like and you as a we as men, we should know what that feels like too. You know, and talk to our partners. Hey, are you okay with this mechanism that is natural? There's no barriers, but it's something that can help us plan our life, but also, you know, understanding what our female partner also needs. Because you got to remember, women are in a biological clock too. We are never in a clock. Men are never in a clock. We don't have that kind of pressure. As a matter of fact, condom is used because we are scared of the unknown. If we have a child, we don't even, let's say you're promiscuous, you have a child with somebody, you don't know what your future is going to look like, or is that the woman of your life? You have to suffer the consequences of it. And so, what has a condom done? Release that stress and that overthinking process that, okay, I can be safe, I can do this, and there's no consequences. But is that really being responsible? You know, like that's the problem. The behavior, how we behave and how we communicate with our partner. You know, it's like, hey, how many like out of curiosity, it's like how many kids would you like to have? And if they say two or three, and let's say, hey, what about we have three or two, whatever the game plan is, you know, if like David is saying, you have an extra child, you know, it's a blessing, you know, it's a miracle. Life is a miracle itself. You're supposed to bless it and go with it and try to do the best that you can as a father and a mother. That's all you can do. There's no perfect parenthood. There is no such thing as read this book and you will be, oh my God, a magnificent parent. No, because life is full of circumstances that perhaps other people have never lived and that you will only experience. And nobody can tell, they can advise you, yes, this and that, but the practice is completely different than the advice or the theory. So I do think like the communication is essential, but it is a taboo. Married men would rather see their women suffer through birth control pills than wear a condom. And I do think that this is where you also like we men have to debate like what is more important, how we feel about, you know, if we don't use a condom versus my wife is suffering with these birth control pills and I can see it. I don't know what you guys think. Autumn, what is your take on that?
Um, uh, I mean, my opinion is just very like different. I think like you guys should be like let's take a random couple for example. Like, I think they should be on the same page regarding like whether they're gonna use an NFP method or just like how they're gonna go about having sex together because I think like the contraceptives for me, in my opinion, it is like you prohibiting life, whether or not like when you get married, you know, you are jumping into the unknown, right? And you are embracing like God's will for your life. And whether that be that you guys are blessed with children or you're blessed with waiting for children, because we don't know if we can have children unless you start trying. But I think that that's a conversation. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the hard things is like I don't know why the guys should like really really do take in mind with their women's health and really just wrap it up. You know, like it's not too hard to wrap up, and it's not as extensive as taking a pill at this time every week or every day for something. Like control, you have to do routine wise, but like yeah, I don't think it should be too hard in that sense for guys to do that, especially for if they love their woman and they don't want to see them go through like any hormonal changes, like what we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, for things that are entropy in the long term. It's the trickling of bad hormones that will create a bigger effect in the lady's body. Uh, so a condom doesn't do that to them. So I think like yeah, guys need to just keep their ladies in mind.
Definitely. ¿Qué piensa David?
Esas preguntas aquí lo pones mal, lo pones mal. No, mira, a ver, hay que comenzar desde el punto de vista de que ser mujer es muy complicado.
Sí.
Es muy, muy complicado. Tengo 3 mujeres en mi casa, todos son un mundo diferente. Mi esposa y mis 2 hijas. Y sé que es muy complicado, no solo por la parte de la sociedad, es muy cruel con ellas, también los cambios hormonales que ellas tienen que soportar en cada ciclo menstrual, los cambios de comportamiento. Muchas veces nosotros como hombres no somos tan pacientes, o no todos son pacientes, y es como subirse una montaña rusa de sub y baja de emociones. Y si nosotros podemos hacerle la vida un poco más sencilla, y eso es en el acompañamiento durante su ciclo, cuando se sienten bien y cuando se sienten mal también. Yo creo que, como siempre le digo a mis hijas, la mujer tiene que saber elegir y escoger bien. Sobre todo escoger bien a quién va a ser tu pareja. Y con ellas vas a tener toda la libertad y vas a explorar todo lo que quieras. Pero es saber escoger bien, porque ya de por sí es muy complicado ser mujer, desde el mismo hecho fisiológico, biológico y social. Entonces, si nosotros podemos hacerle un poco la vida más fácil, sería mejor para ellas, una carga menos. Eh, y sobre todo en la parte de anticoncepción, podemos utilizar métodos menos invasivos, menos dañinos para ella, sería lo mejor. Y sobre todo que haya una buena comunicación entre las parejas para poder llegar al mejor acuerdo. Y sobre todo controlar la fertilidad de esa pareja de acuerdo a lo que te plantees en ese momento con tu pareja. Quizás tú puedes decir, mira, ¿qué te parece si planificamos aquí a 2 años? Y en 2 años utilizas métodos eh, para no quedar embarazada, y después deciden quedar embarazada y lo hacen. Y es una planificación acorde a algo beneficioso para los dos. Entonces, uh, Autumn es la mujer del grupo y sabe que de por sí ella la tiene muy complicada, y me dará la razón, creo, en lo que he indicado.
Yeah, and you know, I have a lot of respect for everything Autumn said, because Autumn, you were talking about the this woman that created the birth control pills, and we it's almost like society put this whole pressure on women to have, I would say, control over like birth control, literally. Why? Like we don't even understand why a woman will give that kind of pressure to a woman. We understand, like, yes, it was because of race and many other factors, but after that, it became more of a like a culture.
Mm-hmm. I love what David was saying too, because I agree with him. Like it really matters who you choose as a partner, as a spouse, because like a woman needs to know her worth, right? And I agree with what David's saying. Like a woman will experience so many emotions, but like if you choose your partner wisely, you guys will be on the same page. I think like you can see the difference, like post sexual revolution and then before the sexual revolution. Like there was a very high family culture, even in TV shows. Like family life was constantly being promoted versus now like and the demise after the sexual revolution was just like a life of promiscuity, a life of, never choosing a partner, a life of like choose work over family for women. You need to be more successful than a man. It's all this propaganda, I feel like, that just erupted, right? And it's really convinced a lot of women that, having a family is like the worst thing that can ever happen to you. Sadly, a lot of women believe this. But if you pick somebody who has the same beliefs as you, who has the same like culture of life as you, where you guys want to create a family together, you guys won't have to worry about contraception, right? Because you guys have the same ideals, and like, okay, well, this is used for marriage, and then like, if God blesses us with a family, He blesses us with a family, but I'm not going to oppose life. And it really matters. He had such a great point, and I love what he was saying about his daughters and that they all have a world within themselves. It was so poetic and beautiful. Such a beautiful example of fatherhood. We need strong fathers out there, and we need strong mothers, because they are the ones who shape the next generation.
Definitely. I love what you said, because choosing a partner is also choosing them for the plan and for alignment, but also on how to come with solutions too. And sometimes when we choose a partner, we want, and I'm not saying this is all of us, but the vast majority wants to choose a partner that is very similar to them. But sometimes you need also a little bit of opposition to challenge you in a good way, not in a bad way. So it's always good to have a little bit of, like, for example, an outside perspective, but for good, not for bad, because you can also have somebody that has an outside perspective, but they're leading you into destruction. And again, I can tell you, like, past partners that have been, let's say, advising me on something that was destructive, and you can kind of tell that, where are you leading me with this, these ideals or principles. But you can also tell the ones that are leading you to, like, to the promised land, to a place where you can feel safe. And sometimes your mindset is not in the right place, and you need that kind of debacle. You need that kind of perspective to kind of like open up your eyes. Because again, like, I realized that, like, I wasn't the owner of the truth, and my moments of biggest stupidity is when I ignore good advice too. So it humbled me to always, like, say, okay, if I want to marry myself, how am I going to be challenged psychologically? How am I going to be challenged to be someone better every day? I need someone that has the same game plan as me or similar, but we learn how to work differences, but at the same time, we challenge each other to grow. And we love each other because of that. It's like we scale together, and it doesn't matter in what realm of life we are, because you can be in the beginning stages of growing, and I can be in the on the high stages. That doesn't mean me as a partner is going to belittle your beginnings, such as you can't make my ascents bigger because I'm up all the way up there. We're equal at the same time. Doesn't matter what position we belong in a status quo, because at the end of the day, like, what is our partnership is all about? It's about love, and in love there is no hierarchies. We're all the same. We all feel the same. We all want to embrace one another. And, but relationships are so complex too. They're so hard. We human beings are, you know, we sometimes can't figure out ourselves, especially men. I can talk from a male perspective. We have to face many demons and insecurities and many things that our testosterone drives us to do sometimes stupid things. And then as you get older, you become wiser on how to control your testosterone. And it's something that we don't, and it's talked too much in men. Like when you're young, that testosterone is telling you to do. Man, you think you're Superman. You can get away with anything. But as you go through, and I do think women bring that balance to our lives. This is why we dedicate this. We have to dedicate more time to women's health. We have to do this because they are the reason why we are in a better position in our life. We feel better about ourselves because we are not only raised by a mom and a dad, but we marry a woman at some point in our life. And they are the rib. They are such an essential key point in our life that without them, what do we become? And their women are not just a reproductive biological system. No, they're complex, but that complexity is beautiful. But it makes us look more simple thanks to them. And that's one of the things I wanted to reflect about women in general. They're God's greatest creation that we so much need to learn how to embrace better, and we got to understand how to love them better through those up and downs. Like we need to learn how to be better partners, be more patient, and also listen better. Because I think one of the biggest opportunities is learning how to listen. You know, I don't know what are your guys' take about what I was just saying. I don't know if something reflected on you guys.
Yeah. I love how it is us men trying to always figure out how to balance our testosterone as well. Like, and we should focus on the woman's health because we were raised by the mothers. We do go after a wife. We do try to find that one that also makes that we can be whole together. Like we try to find those ones that like men and women they go one and one. We're like we're the puzzle pieces to each other's lives, and it's important to understand what your partner is going through, whether that is like what we were just talking about today, the menstrual cycles, life, and birth control. Those are three things that now us men are more educated about than we were the other days. And that can also help us out with, for example, with finding like the way that she finds the right and chooses the right man is also the man that could also understand what she's going through to take the
Yeah,
time.
and understanding is a process. It's not immediate rectification either. It's a process to understand someone. And that's what's important. It's like, and that's the beauty about being with a woman. I'm sorry to interrupt you because you just said something so beautiful. It's like that process of understanding is what makes you fall in love with them.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does, and it goes on both sides. Like she also has to understand his heart and what goes after his mind, because it's the head and the neck. It's completing each other in that sense. Because like when she could also when you understand her, you can also understand the cycles that you guys are about to go through together. Because it is going to be together with her. And then when she also understand him, she, the unpredictability of the testosterone is something that is going to be hard, but maybe she could might understand certain ways of how he is during certain testosterone stuff. Like during a game, he gets hype and he starts jumping around. Or
I'll give you a good example. And I saw this the other day. In Autumn, I give you a lot of credit for something that perhaps people and men undermine. Like when we were at the park and Kevin was, you know, in the park practicing Muay Thai and boxing. The patient and love, yes, and that we have to talk about that kind of love. How patient and loving was Autumn to know that okay, Kevin has a lot of testosterone, he has a lot of energy, and she was so noble to go sit down, just sitting down there, and it's like that's the missing touch we miss on our women. That is what we don't have, and I don't know scientifically it's because of how I do think. Again, don't. This is not a practice or theory. This is my hypothesis. That definitely these hormones help our emotional intelligence and how to anticipate a need. And that hormone of a woman understands how to bring our testosterone levels down. And it understands that we have to do, I think, identifying those those opportunities with women. And I give you a lot of credit for that, Autumn. That was such a noble love act.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, yeah, you can go work out. And it was something that made him happy. So why would I stop him from doing something that he enjoys, you know?
Yeah, she does that a lot, which is great. Like, I love it so much. I'm like, treasure it so much too. Like, especially when hiking as well. Like,
Oh God, not the hiking story, bro. People are gonna hate you on this podcast.
yeah, right? They're like, why you took her around? Where? Around snakes? What?
Yeah, attempted murder 2.0 on Kevin. David, qué tú piensas de lo que estaba hablando en torno a comprender a nuestras parejas, mujeres?
Mira, en el momento que nosotros escogemos tener a una pareja, creo que la pareja nosotros la escogemos netamente por una afinidad, no solo en la parte mental, no solo en la parte mental, sino que nos desafía en la parte intelectual. Nuestra pareja que nosotros escogemos tiene que satisfacer en múltiples aspectos de la vida. Entonces, no solo en estos aspectos de la vida tiene que emocionarnos, sino en las formas más pasivas. Nuestra pareja tiene que emocionarnos en múltiples aspectos, desde el mismo hecho de verla pasar, verla a nuestro lado, saber que está ahí. Así no hay una comunicación verbal que nos emocione. Que nos emociona en su forma de pensar, su forma de ver, de generarnos, hasta de la forma de cómo nos genera problemas. Porque eso también genera una atracción de cómo resolvemos nosotros esos problemas que se nos presentan en el día a día. Sobre todo cuando tienen esa ruleta emocional por el ciclo en que ellas están. La comprensión muchas veces el ceder mucho. Nosotros no lo hacemos de manera coordinada, digamos así, sino es que ellas nos ayudan a eso también. Y entonces, comprender todo esto y llegar a comprender hace que ellas también escojan y elijan qué personas van a estar al lado de ellos. Como dije siempre, yo creo que todos nosotros, al aprender a escoger y a elegir, podemos obtener esto, una buena relación con la pareja, es saber escoger a tu pareja, sentirte atraído por tu pareja, que te genere muchas emociones, buenas, malas, pero esas malas se van a transformar en buenas, porque no ves nada malo cuando estás con tu pareja.
Así es.
Y te ayuda muchas veces a sanar muchas cosas que tú pensabas que no tenías. Entonces, y todas estas emociones se dan por la parte hormonal que hemos visto ahora. Entonces, desequilibrar la parte hormonal de la mujer significa el descontrol, porque ya si teníamos y conocíamos a nuestra pareja, este desequilibrio hormonal va a hacer que nosotros también nos confundamos y nosotros no reaccionamos muy bien a la confusión.
And I love what you said, Dave, because it's almost like they lose their identity for that, we lose who they are as well as a woman. Autumn, what is your intake of what we were just talking? If you have anything.
Um, I think, yeah, I wish, everything that David said, I totally agree with. I think that's what needs to be imparted on our brothers and sisters, our younger generation, like what it means to actually, what commitment means, what it means to pick a partner, to pick a spouse, right? Like, what are you looking for? What are your beliefs, right? Like, these are questions we need to ask ourselves. I listened to a quote the other day that I love. It's deep calls to deep, right? So we can't just live our lives in this shallow, like, surface area. We need to go into the depths. And so we need to, like, rack our brains with, what are we looking for in life? And for my women who are listening out there, embrace the mystery of your heart and your body. And if there are questions about your health that you cannot find an answer to, I encourage you to keep researching. Because there are answers out there, we just have to dig a lot to find the answers, but they are out there, and they are beyond the realms of birth control. And contraceptives are not answers to our bodily health, and like the needs of our bodies. Birth control is not an answer to endometriosis or PCOS. Believe me, there are other answers out there, and I think the more that we value our health, our well-being, like, the more that we'll demand answers from, the doctors that are in charge of this, and we can make a change, and it'll be really beautiful. And on the other coin of birth control, yes, picking a spouse is so important, so that way you can cultivate a beautiful family life. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true what you're saying, Autumn. Like at the end of the day, like we don't want to go against nature. And when you go against nature, we sometimes know that it leads to chaos, like David was saying, and at some point it would also could become destructive in other ways. And you can see that pattern not only chemically in your body, but also on your behavior and the way you think, and also the anxiety, the depression you get. So, last question for Autumn, since we're gonna do women's health. Autumn, what will be the next topic you would like to choose? And thank you so much for being so open. Thank you for knowing how to control there's so much testosterone, but you were in there, and you're such a critical part of what we do that you have no idea how much like I embrace your leadership in the Ethics Skill podcast.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for dealing with my introverted self sometimes when I get nervous to answer some questions. I appreciate that. Appreciate the patience. Oh my gosh, the next topic, I have to think about it.
All right. Think about what the next topic is, but we are definitely going to have women's health at least once a month. I think women deserve that, and we will always have David with us, Kevin and Autumn, myself. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. It helps us a lot. Hit that like. This will be posted about in a month. So if you checked it live, that's the privilege you got to hear us talk about this topic that could be very sensitive. But I just love how even if we have different opinions, different type of convictions, we were not here to judge on anyone's saying. As a matter of fact, we were so respectful to them that we piggyback on a positive way on how to interact with somebody else's conviction, even if they're not the same or they're slightly different. So I really value the fact that there's an environment of respect and professionalism here. And I want to leave David with the last word for today so he can close the show.
Bueno, yo creo que tratamos la salud reproductiva femenina y está, no solo está encaminada o gobernada por el uso de pastillas anticonceptivas, también hay otros métodos en los cuales nosotros podemos tener a la mano. que no son tan invasivos, que no desequilibran su parte hormonal. Muchos pueden decir que estos no son abortivos, que no son invasivos, pero sabemos que al final de cuentas estamos hablando de un desequilibrio propio en la mujer, el desequilibrio hormonal. Yo debería estar del lado de consuman todos los medicamentos, pero también hay una parte donde tengo que ser autocrítico y todo tiene que ir encaminado a tomar una pastilla. Hay métodos que también nos pueden ayudar a resolver ciertos problemas de salud. Hay otros en los cuales es necesario un medicamento para poder generar bienestar. Pero hay situaciones como estas donde puedes elegir y escoger si deseas mantener ese método anticonceptivo, si eres liberal, si eres promíscuo, si tienes en tu cabeza el satisfacerte de una manera carnal, digámoslo así. Pero también te invito a pensar de que eso tampoco no es el camino y que tienes que asumir una responsabilidad de tu cuerpo y lo puedes cuidar de una manera diferente. Y yo creo que respetar tu cuerpo significa respetarte a ti, respetar tu templo. No lo quiero encaminar a una parte religiosa, pero sí de tú conoces tu cuerpo y tú puedes tratar de tu cuerpo de una manera natural. No todo tiene que ser el consumo o el consumismo de un medicamento. Yo creo que hay que saber respetar también la parte de la mujer. Si quiero o no quiero un método anticonceptivo oral. Y hay métodos que nosotros, como las parejas de estas personas, eh, aceptar eso y ir con métodos menos invasivos para ellos, por el respeto que ellas tienen hacia su cuerpo y nosotros ser condescendientes con esa parte. Para mí fuese fácil decir consumamos medicamentos, pero no. Yo creo que de eso se trata este podcast, buscar un sentido un poco más ético, más lógico y normado en que hay otras alternativas que nuestro propio cuerpo puede generar. Entonces yo creo que esto nos lleva a reflexionar siempre de que sí existe otra salida, sí existe otra alternativa y no busquemos lo más fácil, no siempre lo más fácil es lo mejor. Por eso cuando tienes a tu pareja yo creo que a veces es difícil encontrarla, pero cuando la encuentras hay una satisfacción enorme y no hay barreras para cuando la tienes.
Muy bien dicho. And that concludes our episode today. And I do agree with David. Our body is a temple. So take good care of it. And we will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you. Yay!
Good word,
Autumn. Thank you so much, Autumn.
That was awesome, guys. You guys did a good job.
Yeah, I think this was I love how we handled because it's such a like for me being a man to talk about women health it's like what it feels to be pregnant. It could be seen as controversial. But, something at the end of